Should improve our...
Okay, everybody, I'd like to call the Board of Review in order. And would the clerk please take the roll call?
Laurent.
Here.
Hillman.
Here.
Bethune.
Here.
Hammond.
Here?
Asia.
Here. Okay, let the record note that we have a forum. Now, next on the agenda is the election of chairperson. We have a nomination.
I'd nominate Mr. Ager.
We have a second.
Second.
Anyone else? All in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Okay, now the next is election of chairperson. Somebody like to make an...
Vice Chair.
Vice
Oh,
Chair.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair?
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Mr. Hillman.
Do we have a second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, good, we have. If you remember last year, we talked about setting a policy for waiver of 45, the 45-hour waiver. Also, policy for bypassing the Board of Review and going direct to circuit court. And then the last one was a waiver to take telephone or written testimony as opposed to oral testimony before the Board of Review. You each received in your notice the policies that have been directed by I assume the city attorney's office probably set those up for us. And so maybe we can take each one at a time, discuss them, see if you have any questions, and then vote to accept or reject them. So first of all, let's take the notice of the 48-hour, if they don't comply with 48-hour requirement of a notice prior to this meeting, they can still appear, and we may have one of these today. We're not sure if they follow the procedures in our policy. So does anybody have any, have you reviewed it? Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, before we get started, could we have the city attorney introduce himself so we know who we're talking with?
Sure.
Great.
Hi, I'm attorney Nick Vandecastle. I'm working part-time here with the city for the time being until a full assistant city attorney is appointed.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody have any questions on that one?
Okay, that 48 hours, is that exactly what we're doing now? So and that's working.
Right.
And so all we're doing is formalizing what we're doing in this
Correct.
case.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I think we had, no, we didn't have one of those last year, but we had the one thing that I'd like to point out, a couple things to point out that are in, you have to appear within the first 2 hours of our meeting. So you have to appear within the first 2 hours. You still have to file the form, setting what you believe the valuation of your property should be. And so those two requirements are still required, and then we can decide whether to grant the waiver or not. So does anybody, let's vote on acceptance of that policy unless you have any questions.
That's good. I
Okay,
move we
let's,
accept that
wanna cut-
policy, given that it's what we've been doing.
Yeah. Okay, you want to take the roll?
Okay, so, but we have
We
a
did.
first and do we have
I'll
a second?
say.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Okay.
first and second, okay.
Okay, Laurent.
Aye.
Hillman.
Aye.
Bethune.
Aye.
Hammond.
Aye.
Asia.
Aye. Okay, the next one then is the waiver to bypass the Board of Review and go directly to circuit court. We had one of those last year, if you remember. And again, I point out that the objector still has to comply with the 48-hour requirement, still has to provide his objection form, and then can appear before us. And we can decide whether to waive it based upon the objector, the assessor, or our own determination after receiving the testimony or reasons why we should do that. in that policy is listed reasons that we can consider, if we decide to waive it. If you remember last year we did that. We had one, we waived the right directly to circuit court. So anybody have any questions or issues on that?
So this is another one that's basically what we've been doing.
Yeah, we did, it's pretty much what we did last year.
It's codifying what.
Yeah, it's codifying it, yeah.
What?
It's codifying what we're doing.
Okay.
Putting
Those lawyers got these big words.
We're writing down what we're doing.
Well, can I ask a side question?
Sure.
What happened to the guy that went to court?
We settled.
You settled or he settled?
We came
We
to
settled.
a mutually agreeable number.
Oh, okay, so it was a negotiated number.
Right.
Thank you.
So basically what this does is simply allow us to bypass the hearing, right? I mean,
Yes.
It allows a person that's objecting to make the motion to the assessor or ourselves to do that, and it gives us
So
a basis for doing that.
what did it cost him to go to court?
Well, we didn't go to court.
What?
It was settled before court.
Oh, you didn't go to court?
No, this allows the option of bypassing board review and taking the path directly to court. So in between the board review, what would have been a board review hearing and court, there's plenty of time to do any type of negotiation, discovery of new information and so on, which generally is what happens. It gives us more time to
Okay.
talk with the property owner.
Because otherwise it'd get kind of expensive.
Well, exactly. So in that vein,
But
it's
it's
usually
there.
in the best
It's
interest.
cheaper
of
here.
Well, it's in the best interest of the property owner and the city to go through it in this instance, not go to court.
Yeah, and last year, if I remember, both you and the objector were recommending that they go directly to circuit court,
Yes.
correct? And,
Yeah, it was agreed upon.
so, all right. Any other discussion on that? Entertain a motion to,
I move that we accept the waiver of hearing policy.
do we have a second?
Second?
Do you want to take the roll, please?
Loren,
Aye.
Hillman,
Aye.
Bethune,
Aye.
Hammond,
Aye.
Asia.
Aye. And the last one then is the acceptance by the Board of Review to take either written or telephone evidence as opposed to appearance by the objector and oral testimony.
Sworn, written, and sworn.
What's that?
Sworn, written, and sworn.
Sworn, yeah, sworn, written. Well, you can't, I don't know how you do sworn, written, but.
Well, an affidavit.
Yeah. And this is really a new policy. I don't think we've ever had to decide yet. I don't think that's ever occurred before, you know.
I believe we had actually had one the past couple of years where somebody wanted to call in
Okay,
and we denied it because they didn't meet the criteria that you guys thought was reasonable because they just had another hearing in another state.
Oh,
and they
yeah,
didn't wanna
yeah.
Take the time to come up here and have.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we actually talked to that objector, representative of the objector on the phone, and then we decided not to take it, yeah. Okay. So this is really, setting a policy for that type of testimony.
Well, I'm not very excited about having that kind of policy, or that kind of,
Well, this gives us a basis for
Yeah.
denying it.
I'm not interested in listening over a telephone, and I'm not interested in written, but we're here to take care of that, and if you can't make it here, I'm sorry, I just don't have any sympathy.
Well, I can see where there may be some legitimate reason for doing that, and it'll be up to us to decide whether we agree with the reasoning or not. But at least this gives us a policy. Now, the objector is still required to comply with the 48-hour notice, and still required to file their objection to the valuation of the property. So they have to do that prior to asking for the right to do telephone or written testimony. So,
I'll give you an example, Jake. And this has happened in the past. in another community I worked in, people were actually already scheduled to be at the board of review, and they were coming back from a trip, and they had some sort of either a pilot strike or something like that, and their flight was delayed. They weren't able to get back in time. So in that instance, they were allowed to testify over the phone. It was out of their control. So that's where this would come in handy. If something happened that was out of their control and they already had still made a good faith effort to be there.
This just sets a policy and a basis for us to make a decision. The ultimate decision is ours.
You can still decide to say no.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I have to laugh, in the videos we watched on the training, this poor woman, she wanted to go out to the daughter's wedding. That was a nice sequence in there.
For the city attorney, please, is there any potential downside or liability to the board of review, the city, in instances where we would refuse to hear sworn testimony?
No, because it is up to your discretion to allow it or not, and it's a state statute as well.
Right, it is. Yeah.
Correct. So by you just following, in a good faith effort, following the guidelines set out, if you follow that, then would be no discretion or no downfall to you as a board as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion to accept this policy.
So move.
Second,
Second.
would the clerk call the roll?
Laurent,
Aye.
Hillman,
Aye.
Bethune,
Just for clarification, this is just setting a policy, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Aye.
Hammond,
Aye.
Asia.
Aye. Okay, now we would like to have a statement from our clerk.
So as you know, this is the board review, and the first, I guess, rule that we should follow is that is deemed that the assessor is correct. That is your main overlying arching theme, is that the assessor is correct in his assessment, unless proven to be not right by evidence, and the burden that must be met is to prove that he is incorrect in his assessment. Pretty high burden, but it can be met. And the, I guess, procedure is that each person gets to, the objector goes first and is sworn in and admits their evidence. The assessor or you as the board members get to ask them questions. The assessor gets to provide their evidence, and both sides must produce sworn testimony or physical evidence, and the type of evidence that are allowed are any type of evidence that a reasonable person would consider in coming to a serious consideration or a serious issue.
Let me ask you something along that line.
Mm-hmm.
If, because a lot of times this happens, the objector comes in with they had their property evaluated for whatever reason, mortgage or whatever, and they want to present that, and that's written testimony, but it really is kind of hearsay written testimony, and we've always accepted that, I guess. What is your opinion on that?
I guess it would be up to your discretion to accept it or not accept it, but mostly it is the sale of a property is the main parameter that is used. Just in a separate assessment, I guess, could considered given weight, but I wouldn't say it would be very extremely controlling testimony or evidence. As it is, correct, it's not a sworn testimony, it's nothing of that nature.
Yeah, because, I mean, normally, number one, of course, is the sale of the subject property. Number two would be comparable properties.
Correct.
And so, okay.
I have really nothing further. If there's any other questions from the board members or anyone.
I guess I can make one comment in that same vein, comment. With the appraisal, when we do have people wanting to submit their appraisal, we do ask that they contact their appraiser, have them come along in, so that if the board does have questions on the appraisal, that they can ask the actual appraiser. So that is something that we do
Okay.
identify to them and make sure that they do know that.
Okay.
And I assume that that person will be sworn in as well.
Right, and that's one of the things we tell them, that first and foremost, they gotta understand that that appraisal was done for purposes other than assessment review purposes, so.
I guess I didn't know you did that, so that's good. Because,
Yeah,
you know,
we have to identify it because, you know, we are governed by the same set of rules that they are as far as the universal standards of assessment or professional appraisal practices. So when they repurpose an appraisal, which isn't really something that's ethical to do, they should actually be saying, well, I can answer questions on this appraisal, but this isn't really what I should be doing. They should, honestly, when they have an appraisal they bring for assessment review, they should redo the appraisal and make it strictly for, excuse me, assessment review purposes.
okay, yeah.
And it should be done for the person that's asking for the appraisal, not for the bank, who generally is the one that owns the appraisal. Because generally that's what happens, is that the
Yeah.
appraisal is done for the bank. The person that's coming to object to the assessment doesn't own that appraisal. So there's two things there. First off, we ask the owner if they've gotten permission from the bank. Secondly, we ask the owner if they are going to bring the appraiser along to answer questions of that appraisal. So
Right.
we need to let them know that those are two steps they need to take. Otherwise, you know, that questions on the appraisal are pretty much, like you said, hearsay.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, we've never really given much weight to a bank appraisal for mortgage purposes or, you know.
Well, we give them some credit because
Yeah.
they do bring up some comparables and stuff, but understand, and that's one thing we look at too, and we tell them is that, you know, the bank is only there to cover their position on their loan, and that's what some of these comparables look. And a lot of the comparables aren't even within our district, so we have no idea of what the, you know, actual statistics or data involved in those properties are, so we can't answer to those. So we'd rather look at our own properties that we use for comparables within the, you know, our assessment jurisdiction.
If the property we're looking at is income generating, you've got another method you use on that too, don't you? That how much
Right.
money that generates, that's probably better than trying to find a comparable, because you've got to find a comparable piece of property that's generating income in the same manner that the one you've got, and that's damn hard.
Well, it depends. I mean, in this market right now, houses are actually selling and a lot quicker than they have in the past. I mean, a lot of the sales are happening within several weeks of property going on the market, and they'll have multiple offers. So I think with income producing properties, yeah, we look at that first and foremost, because anybody that's buying a income producing property is looking to generate profits. So they're looking at the bottom line on those and comparing what this property will generate for income for them versus another property. So that's what we look at. We do an income approach on those properties to come up with a value on those. And then we use sales and working backwards to come up with a gross rent multiplier and apply those to other properties that haven't sold to come up with a value on those also.
Okay, thank you. And then the third method is
Cost.
cost.
Right, and that's just a basic method that we generally use on new properties and like commercial properties that are just being built that don't have tenants in them yet, and special purpose buildings. On the new properties that are being built all around town, you know, we'll use those and that'll give us a basic number. But even those sometimes, you'll put a cost number on those, and because our model's a little bit older, they will sell for more than we got them costed out to be. So the market dictates whatever it will, and it's one of those things where we're always trying to catch up. And we'll be doing a revaluation probably down the line. Right now, our market isn't quite at 100%. And Chris will let you know what that number is.
Do you get, question, just kind of, you get many people that won't let you in their house if you try to get in, if there's one reason to, like when we put our addition on and
He wouldn't let us in?
when I had a jury in.
Well, it all depends upon circumstance. Most times we won't be allowed into a property is because of the property owner themselves, whether by schedule or location of their primary residence. For example, all those properties that are along Shadow Lane there across from Lambeau, most of them people live out of town. I just spoke with a gentleman yesterday whose primary residence in New York State. He had one of the neighbors let me in to the remodeled property. Now this is one where they spent, $150,000 remodeling it, and the majority of that money went to raising the basement 2 inches so that they could actually put finish down there, which would include a bathroom and a rec room and a bedroom down there, because being built in the 60s, it didn't have the clearance that they required nowadays in order to have living area down there. So they actually had to dig their basement down 2 inches in order to meet current statutory code requirements. So he called to wonder when I had adjusted his assessment upwards, if I had just jacked them up because they had to dig down an extra 2 inches. I should have known that was just for the 1,000 square feet in the bathroom and kitchen remodel that they did.
What are you doing? That brings up another question. What are you doing about those poor people that live around the homes that are being bought? I just saw a home the other day, $649,000 on the market, I think it was. It's got, 2 bedrooms and 1 bath or some crazy thing, but it's adjacent, it's one of those homes that somebody's going to buy, and then all of a sudden they're going to put an $800,000, $900,000 house in there. What about all those poor residents around there?
It depends. So far, what we've seen is that one block of Shadow Lane between Ridge and Oneida is the only one that we've actually adjusted, that I've adjusted.
Okay.
Just the one backing up to it. I haven't gone on the other side of the street, although some property owners have tried to get that price. They haven't really done that. South of Oneida, not south, actually east of Oneida, there's some that have actually torn down and built. Alex has one in his neighborhood. They've torn down a house and built something up quite big. But it hasn't really gotten to that point yet where a lot of them doing that. I haven't seen a lot of sales that have justified us doing that, changing over the majority of the houses. So we haven't done that yet.
We don't really start losing.
And that's the other thing, is that the market has supported the stuff that we've changed, but I'm not so sure that the market is going to support the other properties that we have not changed yet.
Okay.
I've yet to see that. It took us quite a while to catch up with that part of that market on Shadow Lane, but I have not seen enough evidence to indicate that we're going to go whole hog on the other side of the street and up and down the block there, because I don't see that happening. I mean, I'm not going to penalize people, the local people, for some investors coming in and buying 1 or 2 houses.
Well, that was my question.
I don't consider that a trend yet. That's more of an anomaly. People want to cash in on it, and I'm not sure. If they have another bad season, that makes 3 in a row. That's gonna kind of scare some people off.
Any other?
That's actually Chris's turn to talk now, so I've taken this for time.
We have met all the legal requirements under state statute to convene this board of review. I have certified under 70.46 Wisconsin statutes that Jay Hammond, Thomas Azier, David Hillman, Diane Mathoon, and Richard Laurent received the qualified training. The city has an ordinance for confidentiality of income and expense information provided to the assessor under state law section 70.47 sub 7 sub AF. Open book session was held on April 10th, 2019 in the assessor's office, and the assessor was present. Level of assessment is at 94.36%. There are 0 objections this year. And for record keeping, I would ask that you not speak over each other, wait your turn, and speak into your microphone. Thank you.
Okay. Now we'd have the assessor's report.
Well, we did do a discussion, and I guess I can follow up the actual market. I was talking a little bit earlier with some of the board members. Green Bay has seen increase in sales that where we've seen multiple offers on a lot of the properties that are out there, especially in the range between, say, $100,000 to upwards of $200,000. Those houses are selling quite rapidly. The market for properties that probably are over, say, $400,000 to $600,000, that's a little bit less. And those properties are sitting in the market a little bit longer, but they still are selling. You know, you will hear possibly some people say that, oh, the market's not very good for those, but instead of selling, let's say in the market for a year, they're sitting in the market for maybe 90 days, which is normal for a regular house, but they're still selling quite rapidly. So with lower interest rates that we still have and the amount of supply that's out there, it's a seller's market. Our interest rate that we've seen going at 4% is now under 4%. What we see for our ratio at 94.3 is probably going to be under 90% next year. I'm guessing around 89%. So that clock starts ticking again. So if you want to hang around long enough, we could probably do another revaluation. You could all be here instead of thinking about eating donuts and not having any hearings. You could probably be here for a week or so. Really? No takers?
What about commercial property?
Commercial property, for the most part, we've seen all the normal players are filling up their usual openings that we've had. There really has only been a few of them that have the usual openings for office space and so on. It doesn't seem to be a real problem. We've got one gentleman, I don't know if you remember, the one father that's buying up some of the properties to make homeless shelters out of them, Father Rico.
Oh.
Chris's head snaps around when I said that. He's buying up he bought up a few properties down the block here and was kind of assembling them into one bigger parcel and creating a larger homeless shelter. So the properties they did have, I think he's selling them. They were kind of scattered around, so there's going to be more of a concentration of homeless shelters down where they are on the street here. So as we see, as far as some of the new development, it looks like the stuff happening over across the river in Larson Green. I don't know if everybody had a chance to see some of the new development going on over there. It's pretty impressive. Some of the office building that's been in the second Larson building. You know, Steve's been through them. Pretty neat what they're doing in there. If anybody's been up to the top of the Titletown building, the newer building, that's a good vantage point to see what's actually happening out there. The Northeast Industrial Park, I think the finishing touches were done probably this last year on the Lombardi Cancer Treatment Center and some of the additions they did out there on Aurora. So this is probably the last year that I know of that we're going to have any additions in Aurora's value. So other than that, out there they've got the one farms. What's the name of that place that they're building out there off of Mason Street? Nature's Way is a big plant they're building out there at the end of Mason Street. That's one of the new additions out there. So a lot of things going on. I think for the most part we're doing well, and I think the one thing that we're looking at and down in Madison is that they're trying to get rid of that 2% growth thing so that you can raise your levy regardless of what your growth is in new construction, because you know when you get up over $6 billion in value, 2% of $6 billion is a lot of value in order to get over in order to reach your maximum levy potential. So we have to be mindful of that also.
I'm surprised we don't have East Town Mall. It seems like every year we have East Town Mall. Is Shopko part of that, or are they separate?
They're separate. We'll probably hear from them next year. But East Town Mall, ended up exactly where we thought it was gonna be a no-go. They pushed and pushed and pushed, and it ended up pretty much where I thought it was gonna be, and there's nothing going on there. So I wasn't sure what they're gonna do, but the stuff in Oak Cub Foods is really good. I mean, if anybody's seen that, it's pretty impressive what they did there. Same developer.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure what the deal is with Easttown. Marshalls, Ross, Petco. I mean, it's very nice looking there, so they did a really a bang up job, but just the whole Easttown Mall property needs like a big anchor store on the other end of Kohl's. Now that Shopko's gone, maybe they'll get a Target to move in on the other end or something, which would be a smart thing
Yeah.
for Target. I mean, there's no Target over on that side. So there's.
Well, you got Target down in Bellevue, but, you know.
Yeah, there's one down there, but there really isn't a whole lot serving that area
Yeah.
than Shopko. So
Any questions of the assessor? Okay. Who would like, we have the rolls here with,
Two kinds.
yeah, the rolls are still there. Would somebody like to go over and examine them? Rick, you did it last year, didn't you? You looked up your own property. Somebody else could want to go over and
If
check
ever needs a
them.
parcel number, we do have the computer up here so that we can look up parcel numbers for you.
Okay, if you know your parcel number.
I did one.
Oh, you did.
Somebody should look at them.
Yeah, make sure my affidavit is attached to the first.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to go look?
Yes.
Yep.
What's your address?
Union, what?
What's your address so we can give you a person?
558 Pinehurst.
Well, I don't know if you want Jay looking up his. He'll be filing a waiver right now.
21-820-R-38.
Oh, these are Jim's neighborhood.
Damn numbers.
You're gonna have to read that.
That's fine.
Get that?
21-820-R-38. Small.
Well, he's got one of the new guys for his appraiser, so,
Do you have to generate these every year?
yes. The donuts or the rolls?
The rolls.
Chris does the donuts, I do the roll. Actually, Nicole and Scott do the, Christie does the assessment rolls.
Number, get 8 what?
820-R-38.
Used to be we'd have them on, the county would print them out on actual like ledger paper, and the big books and stuff. They don't do that anymore. County does less and less for the cities as time goes on. Well, they still do the plat books. And I'm not sure exactly why, since everything's on the computer. But we still get copies of certified survey maps and plat pages. Statutory purposes. Everything's on the computer, but we have to actually have a printed
And the
roll
last
out.
number, Scott?
And if there's any changes, the clerk actually has to make a change. Right. Yeah. So it's, the rules have not changed with technology as far as assessment. We've worked on it. I was with Department of Revenue. We've changed the assessment manual to try to keep up with technology, but it hasn't.
Thank you.
Statutes haven't changed to change with the times. So, and I'm getting too old to even want to do that anymore.
Thanks a lot.
It's frustrating.
Let the record show that Jay did review the rolls, especially on his own property, so.
That's what the video tells you you're supposed to do. I wouldn't want the clerk thinking we were getting this video and we weren't learning anything.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay, next on the agenda is consideration with possible action on additional requests received by the city assessor. Do we have any additional requests?
When I saw two discs.
We haven't gotten anything.
Okay. Consideration with possible action on notices of intent to file objections received. Anything there, Ms. Clerk?
Nope, nothing.
Consideration with possible action request of waivers to the Board of Review hearings. We don't have anything on that either, do we?
So far. So far,
Okay.
no.
And then, no other notices to file objections that we,
Not yet.
okay,
Nope.
all righty. Now we just wait.
For an hour and a half.
Okay, everybody.
That's what happened in our family.
It is 10:30. We've been here our 2 hours. We don't have anybody, no objectors have shown up. The assessor's office does not have any properties that were reassessed following the close of book. We don't have any personal properties. That means we have no work left. So would somebody like to make a motion that we adjourn?
Also move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, nay. Okay, good, we'll see you next year.
Thank you.